Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Yes. Happy Friday to you, and welcome everybody to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, innovation. This week, we are going to, I guess we've been doing a mini-series, actually, Ben, haven't we, when we think about it, on claims and claim service and that type of thing. To Julia last week, we had the full podcast with Julia Graham Mick. So we're going to just finish our little mini series on claims, as we had the London Market Claims event last week, I think it was. So we're just going to reflect on some of the outcomes from that. But we've also got some AI chat. Jeff Bezos is joining us in the studio. Oh, no, he's not. Oh, we just have a bit of a Jeff Bezos news. That's all.
No, he did it in Italy. No, he wouldn't do it here.
Yeah, we needed a more exclusive location. But let's kick off. Venice, yeah. We don't have enough water here in mind you. We've got the River Medway flowing next to our office, Ben.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, kind of similar to Venice.
Yeah, it is when it floods. Right.
Yeah.
Shall we start off with a bit of claims journal? US warns of catastrophic hacks after cyber firms F5 breach. What's that? Like F5 on my computer?
Yeah, it's not the most exciting. Well, catastrophic is a good word in the title of a headline, but it is. It's quite an interesting story around this growing concern about hacking. And I know we've covered it quite a lot, but everybody's covering it. But this one is more sinister, I think. So nobody will have heard of F5, I don't think. It is a Seattle-based maker of network software, and it provides network facilities, basically, for servers for big corporations. And it does 48 out of the 50 top companies.
Wow.
Yep, in the world. And what's happened is there's been a breach, but they have not. This breach has been, in their words, surreptitiously and persistently. The hackers have surreptitiously and persistently dwelled in the systems long term, which means years. These hacking businesses have been inside their system. They've taken control of network segment. Of the whole network segment of this thing, so they can get basically into all and it's a bit of the software that, from my understanding, distributes all the updates to all these companies' servers, and this sits at the front of the server, and data comes in and out and gets encrypted and all that sort of thing, and this thing does it. So these hackers have taken control of this, and this means that the hackers potentially know all the weaknesses of the supply chain networks of all of these companies.
Crikey.
Yep. Quite bad, eh?
That is bad.
Malicious. The headline doesn't do it justice, does it?
No, I'd say catastrophic. Change that to malicious.
Yeah.
If I was the sub editor, but anyway.
So anyway, so this is the situation, and they've looked and they've not yet seen any supply chain attacks. They've not seen this being put into action across all these networks. So there's, in some senses, this has happened, but there's nothing to see here. And they've tried to change all of the codes and things, the certificates, etc., to stop this, to kind of fix it laterally. But they have written, obviously, to say this is pretty bloody serious and we're sorry. And the usual PR thing, which is we will learn lessons from this and all that sort of malarkey. US Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has warned all federal agencies that they now face an imminent threat. And they have to look at this really very carefully. So there is government circles and I guess everywhere else now, they think they're waiting for something to happen as a result of this breach. And they've also really said that this is sort of thing that is potentially just going to be one of these systemic cyber hacks that goes through every single system in the world, or nearly every system of corporations in the world, and everybody's looking at it and saying, how the hell could this happen?
Wow. So from an insurance point of view, this adds another layer of complexity, I would have thought, because it isn't an attack on your system, it's an attack on a partner or provider or whatever you want to call them.
You get sued.
As yet, there's been no claim.
No.
So,
but even though nothing's actually happened, I bet everybody's got to do a lot of extra work as a result of this, and therefore they will be getting sued as a company for this. And there will be policies coming into action around this, and we'll come on to this in a minute, actually, which is the next story. But it's very insurance terms for me. What it also calls into question again, how could insurance ever cover this? Because it's so huge and fundamental that there's no way that the policies that are currently written and the wordings would cover anything like this. This is vast.
Yeah. I saw an interesting post on LinkedIn talking about the Jaguar Land Rover hack, basically saying that, arguing that the government shouldn't have stepped in to save the company, when actually if they had bought cyber cover, then actually a lot of, they'd be in a better position to first tackle the hack, but then also provide that kind of safety net, maybe for suppliers or the rest of the value chain as well. Yeah. So I was just wondering then whether cyber insurance becomes almost mandatory for there are certain insurance that we have to purchase because we're running a small business, similar to car insurance. If you've got a car, you've got to have a certain level of cover. And I just wonder whether digital, as businesses become ever more reliant on digital networks, and as your story points out, kind of that interlinked nature of these kind of systems, that some kind of policy, if you take your car insurance policy, you can just take a third party fire and theft, or you can have a fully comp. And maybe there has to be some kind of foundational level policy that businesses have to put in place. Quite interesting, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's a question of really what's public and what's private, and what needs to be covered by the public sector, the government, if you like. And this is a bit like flood, isn't it? And things, and just really, do you start to say that there's a tax here? Because I think you're right. I mean, the one I've just shown, and the JLR thing is supply network and the partnership. The small businesses that make up these ecosystems or these supply chains. And in the JLR story, as I understood it, JLR was pretty financially sound, but all these other companies were struggling to survive, and they are essential to JLR surviving. So you could argue there, well, why would they pay all these smaller companies? But I guess there's a sort of a sense of maybe it doesn't cost all that much to prop up, say 50 companies in Birmingham or the Midlands, for government, and then they kind of look good and they sort something out. So it's maybe at that level, it's not too bad, because you just give them a kind of cash flow cover, if you like, for that period of time. Yeah. But as these become more potentially systemic, like that F5 one, then you've got to, that would be kind of so huge that you've got to say, well, how could what would all those could those other companies buy insurance? I'm sure cyber people are talking to government about this, because they'll say, well, we can't provide that sort of cover for something that's systemic, and is happening all the time. And if someone's lived in your system for years, that does really suggest it's kind of systemic, doesn't it? I mean, in its literal sense, you've got someone like literally in your system, just like a sort of parasite type thing. And they used to call them, didn't they call them worms? What was it that they used to, what were they called?
They were called worms and Trojans and things like that, weren't they?
Yeah, I thought Trojans was something different, but that's fine. Worms. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, funny how language changes, isn't it? So yeah, I think you've got to. You're right. I think there's got to be some sort of sense of can we kind of cover this, and does government have to step in at some point to shore it up? It's very messy for insurance, really now at the moment.
Yeah. And also, if you layer on top of that just the kind of technology landscape, and it's just the million miles an hour that it's currently going at in terms of development and applications, it just becomes ever more complicated. So how are you, if you're underwriting, how are you keeping ahead of those kind of initiatives, developments, especially if an organization has a level of cover and then suddenly bolts on a piece of AI that goes nuts, let's just say. And you went, well, hang on, when you took the policy out, you didn't have, that wasn't part of your infrastructure.
No, well, go on to the next story. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, let's move on. So let's put Jeff up. So yeah.
So this isn't really about, well, it's partly about Jeff. So Jeff Bezos has said that AI is a bubble, but it's a good bubble. In other words, it's not a financial bubble where there are all these kind of domino effects that you get in a collapsing financial market. It's an industrial bubble. So he's saying it's less likely to be, catastrophic if it bursts, which he sort of feels like it will, but then it will rebuild and there'll be good. He kind of says good stuff is left over from these things like the .com crash and financial, all that sort of stuff. He said financial crash, that's bad. It was just generally bad. Whereas I sort of think he's playing out this thing. It's a kind of clear out of the hype, and then you get the ones that get through it. But this article, rather well actually, in insurance business, does argue that is fine, but that's not what underwriters think, because they've seen this all before. And that actually these risks related to AI are significant for insurers. And as you just said, they're not really covered in the original wordings, or they're not supposed to be. So there's a piece of work the CFC has done saying that most businesses don't know if their policies would respond to an AI loss at all at the moment. Well, I'm not surprised at that. That's not sure you needed to ask that question. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't know because it's moving so quickly. And Beasley's issued warnings as well, but they're very worried that so underwriters, what happens, of course, is if this AI bubble does burst and then lots of businesses start to be failed, or the investors who were in them, start to lose a hell of a lot of money, then there's always a backlash, a sort of litigation type backlash, that these companies all get sued. And this is exactly what you had in .com. There was an avalanche of D&O losses through the E&O, the cyber, and the probably the D&O policies, where this would be big, potentially very big losses for the insurance industry. And what you tend to have to do then is a whole kind of repricing of the whole sector and a kind of reworking everything out from scratch, really. And then this is kind of what the article goes. So companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and so on, the big AI software companies, they've had to basically put their own insurance programs together. bespoke. Not they can't buy them from carriers or via brokers. They're kind of having to do this themselves, and that's kind of rather telling. That the insurers are not really wanting to go too near this at the moment. So it's a good article really about exactly what you were talking about, which is and I was going to say one other thing related to the previous story. Insurance is just not moving fast enough to keep up with this. It's a slow moving, not particularly innovative industry, and I don't think we are keeping up with this stuff. I don't think we're anywhere near it.
No.
So if we're not, then should insurance really touch this? Go near it. I mean, I think quite brave to do it, but it is. It's just it is genuinely very, very risky at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. So I think the original Jeff Bezos kind of interview is on LinkedIn. Yeah. So if you just type it's quite good. It's 6 or 7 minutes where he's kind of reflecting on the .com bubble bursting and the impact it had on Amazon, and basically just saying that. So if your core business is profitable and you are satisfying customers, and basically all your metrics as you were running any other business are telling you this is sound, no matter that the market is pushing down your share price or whatever else, that's just the environment you're in, but you are creating value. But yeah, it's quite interesting, the insurance angle, because that isn't covered in the questioning. And
it probably wouldn't, because often it doesn't get talked about, because people don't think about it as the fact that without the insurance, it's really hard to operate as a business, full stop. So I mean, almost in future, you do want people like Bezos to talk about the importance of being, managing that risk, because you can say, well, it's a good bubble or a bad bubble, and it's all a bit like, kind of general comment, but actually reality is that insurers have to price this risk in if it's going to come off the balance sheet. And the question, how much of that can they really assess when the world is moving very quickly? But you're right about his points were good actually on the fact of solid businesses, and that you've got to have, if you've got people buying your product, basically, I think he was saying, wasn't he? Yeah. If they're buying your product and they seem to like it and it's increasing, then ultimately you'll be a sound bet.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really good way of looking at an investment, actually, as to and a solid business is, are people buying? I used to work for years ago. I used to work for a leasing company, and I started at a time when the financial markets were very frothy, and then it all collapsed. I think it was the crash before the one in 2008 or 9. And one of the things that we had to work out as the market started to crash very quickly was, how do you know whether the businesses who you've got leases with are actually going to be solvent? So salespeople would have to go in, and they would have to be listening out for things like phones ringing and stuff like that, because because the problem was bad debt, right? So basically all the reporting turned to saying, well, is this a business where we pull the plug now, or and call it a bad debt, or what? So it was as simple as that, really. I wonder if they still had the same. I mean, in a digital age, I suppose you've just got to kind of look at the clicks and the purchasing on the credit cards and the so on, online purchasing.
Yeah. Interesting. So that's good, Ben. I like that conversation.
They did well together, those stories, didn't they? I think
they did.
I think they covered the territory well.
That production meeting was a success that we had.
I think
3 minutes before we started.
I think the brainstorming that we've done has been borne out in the show there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. So last week, I was saying, we ran London Market Claims. Lots of people sell out. Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for for coming along. If you joined us, there's you in the middle there, Ben, asking a question.
Oh,
looking
photo that.
looking sharp. Yeah, isn't it?
Just caught me.
Yeah, I thought. I think it's called Photoshop. It's in the post.
I bet you did loads. Yeah, I bet you did. Yeah. Did you do a Gen AI and put different clothes on me and things like that? Yeah.
Yeah. But I thought we'd kind of reflect on some of the themes that came out the pre-event survey, namely kind of AI talent, operational efficiency and transformation, data analytics, delegated authority and board role, and client expectations and inflation, and just, I guess, reflect on some of the themes that I actually talked about at the conference, whether we thought it was moving forward, how we felt about the day. I was on stage quite a bit, so I didn't get to speak to a lot of people because I was running around, obviously, but it felt to me a pretty engaged group. They were open to new ideas. There were some pretty challenging questions for the panelists to answer around those type of topics. But what was your feeling of the?
So yeah, we always reflect, is it moving forward? And I think in the last couple of years we kind of said we feel it is. Being controversial, I think it probably isn't. I think despite all the technology and everything else was my impression. And where it isn't moving, I'm not no doubt that the technology is moving and everybody's, talking about that and so on. But the equal and opposite, and I think it's not, I don't think it's an equal, almost the unequal opposite effect is this kind of, what about the people and the whole proposition? And I don't think that's there really. I don't think that has moved on, and I think that has to move on. I think the value proposition of claims has got to be much more front and center here. And I was thinking as well, there was a young woman who asked a question at the end and made a kind of statement about the fact that underwriting was still shading claims in most places, and therefore why would young people go into claims and not underwriting? And that was, quite heartfelt, really, I thought, and a real shame if that's what people think. I don't think that's entirely the picture from clients I work with. I have to say, I think there are really brilliant businesses with good, fantastic claims teams doing a good job, but equally, I do still think we have not claims has not broken out into that space where it can really be a kind of value driver for insurance. That would be my sense. And it's fine to talk about where the technology will create efficiency, but does it create value? I think is where we're not moving on at the moment. Is that fair or unfair?
I think that's probably is fair. I think the only thing that I'd come back on is that I think during the panel sessions that I chaired, and maybe you were asking the question in that photo, Ben, I think people are starting to think about it. But I think the problem is the word starting. It comes back to kind of, we seem to have good ideas and good discussions at the conference, but actually, does anything change off the back of it? I think I get the sense that claims teams are pretty stretched, and to have kind of innovations, whether it be around tech or talent or whatever it is, or just trying to reimagine claim service of the future, I think there's very little headspace and kind of bandwidth, if you like, to have those strategic discussions. So I think that's probably why the conference works pretty well, because it takes people out of that day-to-day environment. That I think the problem is when you go back to that day-to-day environment, it's very difficult to have those conversations and get them moving.
Yes, I think it's. I mean, I think quite rightly, you set up the sessions, and inevitably they are about the operational pipes, the technology that might create more efficiency, almost, and the talent. Indeed, if you talk about that, and I think and all the topics there you've got in the themes are really things that say, okay, we do all that, We sort that out. We get decent talent. I mean, don't know what order this is. We get operational efficiency. We get good talent. We sort out the mess that's delegated in bordereau. We get decent data. We work out what client expectations are, and we sort out litigation and social inflation and all that stuff. The question is then what? The kind of so what then is, then it's, I think at that point, you're then saying, right, okay, so that's kind of fine. Now we've got all that out of the way, all that mess that we talk about. And now we've got to say, what's the benefit of this and what can we really do? I mean, we've just talked about two massive areas of underinsurance, probably protection gap, you could call it, where there's huge evolving risks, but nothing's really happening insurance wise in that space. They're still dealing with wordings that deal with things that don't even have AI mentioned in them. Now, and the reason for that is that we're not fast moving enough. We're not onto the new risks. I mean, imagine if this list was, we don't have to have any of these things here. We're going to focus on the way in which our brilliant claims offerings can take another, $1 trillion off the balance sheets of businesses and help them get through the cyber threat. Now, we're not even near to talking about things like that, or climate, for example. So I think there are big prizes on the table potentially, and I think there is a kind of sense for me more widely of urgency around where insurance has to add value. And the question about underwriting versus claims is actually more fundamental, I think, as well, because it's saying that underwriting largely does pricing at in most part, and it prices risk, but claims learns about risk, and claims understands what risk is, and all of that data and all that experience can be projected forward into better products, and I don't think that happens as much as it should either. So I think claims is really, really important to kind of this innovation change, but at the moment, not just at the conference, but I think more generally, I think we've kind of moved forward, inched forward, got better at service, bit more efficient, bit better at process. But have we really made a leap that would grow the industry, one, and make people, to the young woman's question, say claims is a place for me? I think that's kind of my feeling, is that it'd be fantastic if we start to have more of those conversations going forward. I think we will. I'm saying this in a hopeful, optimistic fashion, that I think that is starting to be what businesses are thinking about. But they can be a bit slow, I think, and regulation doesn't help.
No. I think I'd agree with all of that, and I think to try and give people the space, we're going to have a series of kind of team meetings, not very many, just 4 between now and the next get together, the next conference, where we can try and take some of these themes and just give people the space to, talk through some ideas, but also benchmark what they're doing with their peers as well. So to try and kind of capture the excitement of those sparks of conversation that happen live on the day and keep the momentum going. So, and you do your claims events as well, which I think is really important, that people get together and have a chance to think more strategically.
I agree. I think there's a bit about what's the ambition of claims, isn't there, as well here, which is, what do we want to be? Where do we want to be? And it's a shame, again, having a comment saying, well, we're not even in the place to be kind of admired or part of the part of the business. And that's not true everywhere, as I just said. But I think if that's still a feeling, then you're really kind of restricting ambition. You're not really talking about what's possible. And as, again, if you look at the risks that the world is facing, in a sense, talking about what you do with bordereau still is completely the problem. Messing around with sorting bordereau out is kind of fiddling while Rome burns, if I can use that praise.
Indeed. Yes. So that's I think that's capped that section off, Ben. Yeah, good reflections on the conference. So, and we'll keep you posted on the special interest groups. If you're interested, you can just drop me or Ben a line, and we'll put you in touch with the right people.
Yeah, it was a very good conference, by the way. It was a very good conference, I thought.
Thank you.
Just to say, I thought the final panel was excellent. I think I mean, there were lots of good comments. I thought Colin Masson on that part made some really good points about. I think his characterization of things that he was optimistic and pleased about, and things that he was pessimistic and disappointed in, were not a million miles from what I just said. Actually, on reflection, I'd forgotten he'd said some really good stuff there, but I think he was about that. So we're not really moving into that ambitious, space. And I'll just add one more thing as a thought, which is we talk a good game in insurance about, we're the people who make the world happen and the wheels turn, and thanks to a lot of enthusiastic people who want to get the message across, quite rightly. But the fact is there's still a massive protection gap, and insurance isn't really growing. So it sort of contradicts itself if we're not growing and we're saying, look at all this stuff we do.
Yeah.
Well, grow, right? I mean, it is fundamental stuff, but it's we've got to be quite careful about this. Just let's go out with a gung-ho message that we make everything work when we don't actually. In a sense, governments do that as well. So we've got to work out I think generally where we fit. But claims is so important to that. It really is.
Yeah. I agree. Right. Thank you. Thanks for that, Ben. And it's always good to get your insights from the audience perspective rather than me as the organizer. So that's good. Right. So let's wrap things up. Anything good this weekend? It feels pretty autumnal at the moment. Doing anything?
Well, no, not a lot. I've got a bit of a quiet weekend, and I'm away then for a couple of weekends. So this is the chance to recharge my battery. So we were just talking about logging and chopping logs for wood burners and things. So that's a bit on my mind as the autumn nights close in.
Have you got a big axe?
Yeah, well, I have. I've got two axes, a small one for kindling jobs,
splitter,
and a splitter for the big stuff. I've got chainsaw as well, so that's not like I haven't got 3 ways to kill myself, as my wife says. Which one will it be?
Yeah, I
tried to blow myself up in a garden fire a few weeks ago with pouring petrol on it, and that I mean insurers shouldn't touch me. I'm a walking disaster. I'm a walking potential big claim.
Phil's got a great story about a fire that could have been horrendous, but it's a lesson to be learnt from embers and just how long it takes for an ember to then set fire to your whole woodshed. It's roughly about 9 hours. So
oh, okay. Yeah, mine was an ember story, but I'll relate it. I mean, it's too horrendous to go on here. It's 18.
Oh, right, 18.
Over 18. But the severity was, I wasn't badly injured, but the severity was such that my whole family kind of sat me down, and the short form of it was have a word with yourself. Even my kids.
Very good.
So then to offset that, I've gone out and bought big axes and stuff, and I'm doing all that. So as Beasley says, it's risky business.
Very good. It is. It's with you involved.
Yes.
What am I doing? I'm dropping my children off. They're going on holiday. It's half term next week,
Oh,
so
yeah.
they're away.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, lovely. Very nice. So you get some quiet time.
not really. We're so busy at work that
Good.
it's great, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything's very busy in the market, isn't it? And there's huge shifts and changes.
Yeah, lots to discuss and talk about. Great. Right. Thanks for tuning in again, everybody. We will see you next week. And yeah, have a good weekend.